and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. My name is Effie Kilmer with Microsoft, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Ido Biger, Chief Data Officer and Technology Officer at Delek US, and Ron Thompson, Chief Data Officer at Quantum Space. Thank you for joining us today, and by way of introduction, I'll pass it to Ido if you want to share a little bit about your career.
Yes, Effie, thank you very much. So Ido Biger, EVP of Data and Technology for Delek US. It's a Fortune 500 oil and gas company, being in this industry for around 20 years. I've had the opportunity here to do both roles, and I did the same thing for El Al, the Israeli Airlines, for a couple of years. And prior to that, the Chief Data Officer for a television company, and a few years before with the financial industry in New York and many software companies back in Israel. Around 20, 25 years in this field, mainly a data geek, dealing with data engineering, data analytics, teaching about big data technologies in the universities and machine learning capabilities. So a lot of interest around this area. I'm very happy to be here. And great seeing you again, Ron and Effie.
Thanks, Ido. And Ron, would you like to share a little bit about your career and quick introduction?
Sure. And Effie, good to see you. Ido, always good to see you. And thanks for having us on today to talk about these topics. So I've had 30 plus years working across government and commercial organizations, spanning 7 federal agencies and Fortune 50 companies. I recently retired last fall as a senior executive with NASA, and there I held the CDO role there. So, I gravitated to sort of the data, to being a data practitioner, a data evangelist for data. About 5 years ago, before I retired, I saw the value of data to business. And luckily for me, I was transitioning to NASA about the 2019 time frame, and we had at the time the federal government was implementing the Evidence Act that actually formed the role of the CDO across government agencies. So that was very fortunate for me to be rolling into a really codified role that had the responsibility. In addition to that, that time at NASA, I was co-leading the agency's digital transformation effort, and we were transforming our workforce and workplace at that time. And data was what we found was data was at the core of this transformation that is still continuing to go on. So that's a little bit about where I've been and what sort of why I've really gravitated to the data role. And Effie, you mentioned that I am with Quantum Space as a chief data officer. We're a space startup building satellites, and we'll be selling data products and satellite services.
Great. And Ido, you'd mentioned you are the 3rd generation CDO. What led you to your career in data, and how do you define 3rd generation CDO?
So as Ron mentioned, I have over 20 years of experience with the data field, right? But it started with the technology aspect of it. So data engineering, and then data analytics and machine learning afterwards with the establishment of a few data science teams. But all along, there was something kind of missing, right? And it's actually the value creation out of data. It's not just enabling and providing the data products through the different peers, but it's about what to actually do with it. And I think after spending some time in New York in the financial industry, I was called back to be a chief data officer for a television company, which was the first role. So I was pretty much one of the first in Israel to do so. And we were trying to understand what is actually the role of the chief data officer there. And it was more about just not providing the data, but also enabling the business to do something else because of that and make the value creation. So I think the first generation there is about the understanding of the transition from a BI leader, a data analytics leader, to a full rollout as a chief data officer with exploiting data capabilities. Second generation, well, once again, I went to the airline, right? The El Al Israeli Airlines, and it kind of was more of an opportunity to see how a large enterprise can really deal with the challenges there. Once again, all around the value creation, but more in the business aspect. So I was the equivalent there to the CIO, and we were kind of working alongside and making sure that every technology aspect there really contributes afterwards to the business on the data platforms and data capabilities that are enabled now. So the first one, once again, the first generation was about kind of reporting to the CIO, reporting to the CMO, understanding kind of the value creation out of it. The second one was kind of more strategic level. And then the third one is actually doing the third, or kind of the dual role of also being the CIO, Chief Technology Officer, alongside being a Chief Data Officer, that allows me kind of to close the loop in that matter. And I think it allowed me throughout the career to really evolve the right way, not in too fast pace, right? To really evolve from the value, from the creation of the data, right? The data sources, the data hubs, the data tools, data products, alongside this journey to make sure it really becomes a valuable asset to organization and then being utilized afterwards in many things, in many stations around the career. So definitely very, I'm enjoying this journey, and still haven't got even to the middle of it, as I see it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've seen the evolution of the CDO role over the past few decades here, and in particular, coming out of the financial crisis with the financial institutions. Ron, you'd mentioned, of course, the Evidence Act being so important in the public sector, and then the Transparency Act coming last year. How have you seen the evolution of the CDO role transforming in the public sector?
Yeah, so Effie, that's a really good question, and Ido really alluded to. I think here is where the commercial companies are really leading, I think, ahead of a lot of public sector organizations. So I think it's sort of like describing a change agent, right? The first is the disruptor, right? The second is sort of the middle. So a lot like what Ido described in his journey, I think a change. You can just look at that as like a roadmap for a change agent as well. I really look at it. There really isn't one answer, one way to implement the role. I think organizations are matured differently. A lot of it depends on the tone of leadership for an organization where the role can sit. But I think there are very much technical aspects of the role, and I think that's where organizations really focus on initially, is that technical capability for visualization. How do however, it is more of a business partnership, I believe. And then what is the ultimate value that liberating data for organization can provide, for consistency, for veracity of data. So it's really gonna, my experience across these federal agencies, and I started from a statistical organization, so it's really an interesting path that I've taken personally, and then having the Evidence Act sort of at the twilight of my federal career kick in. I've worked at the Census Bureau, where there's huge amount of data across, for every, about the general makeup of citizens in the United States. So you can run, just think about the vastness of that data set, and then how that data is used consistently to inform, how appropriations are done throughout the United States. So the role, I think is going to really, to see true value, is really needs to be at that highest level of the organization, Effie. I think it really needs to be there, because it really will show importance. It really would show how barriers can be removed for liberating data. And it really would help with that frozen middle. I've talked about this quite a bit, right? Where the top leaders of an organization want you to be transparent with data. The younger generation coming into the workforce demands that they have access to data. So it's really that frozen middle that believes that they need to control information, and their value is, as that middle level management, their value is to interpret that data for upper management or the younger generation coming in. So I think there's a lot of cultural aspects to the role that need to be known, embraced, to see how specifically you can do it in an organization, and then ultimately what is that upper top level commitment to what the role can bring to the business.
Yeah, Ron, there's so much to unpack there, especially you're mentioning data share. We see it's almost like a primal instinct that we have inside of organizations of this is my data.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to share my data to anyone else. And the cultural component of having to transform your organization, where coming into this role, it seems like initially for a first generation CDO, it's technology challenge. If you just throw technology, you'll be able to accomplish your goals. But in reality, when you start actually speaking to different lines of businesses of how they're leveraging their data, it's really a people upskilling and cultural revolution. Ido, are you finding the same in your organization at Delek?
Yes, of course. I mean, Delek is a Fortune 500 company that is a very traditional industry, right? Oil and gas. And you find those aspects all over the place. But I think it's the main kind of magnitude of this role is not just to enable it technology-wise, right? As the first generation that we talked about. It's about really being a partner and understanding the value creation out of it. So you really have to find some clever use cases to start with and to kind of make sure that you're showing the value in order for them to join the success train. So you can start with more simple things as just unifying the language, just making sure that all of the terms are being used correctly. And of course, the numbers are aligning there. And it can start with the daily reports that are enabling all of us to speak the same language. But it can continue with interesting implementations as some of the production optimization that we had with neural network models that are based on reinforced learning that are allow us to optimize our production. So as soon as you make those things better and you show the value creation that gets out of it, more and more people will understand, right? Doing that, we're actually making ourselves better. So by understanding kind of, it's not a conflict, but it's the challenge. It's an organization challenge. It's kind of a political challenge to make sure that we're all working together in order for each and every one of the pieces to be better. So I think it's the main challenge then was to kind of making sure that you're creating the value and that people perceive data as something that will make them better, right? And what's in it for me is a very classical question that if I will utilize the data in the right way, I will be better at what I do. And it's not kind of my data. It's if all the different units are going to collaborate around the same thing, all of us are going to be better. And this is, I think, is the main issue there. Whereas in the first generation, you just, providing the data to whoever requires it or needs it. You're not really making sure that it's well determined and well used. And now I think it allows us to do far more things on the technology front as well. Maybe we'll discuss it afterwards, but more on the data aspect of things, this alignment, and making sure that it's the right tool to supply you with the solution that makes the value creation out of it.
Yeah, and in my conversations with chief data officers, they say one of the biggest challenges is delivering value quickly. And when you were in New York recently, we had talked about how you're uniquely positioned inside of Delek US, where as the chief technology and data officer, you own both the business and the tech. And that's been able to accelerate and deliver value quickly. Do you mind just sharing a use case or an example of how that's helped you deliver value quickly?
Yeah. So once again, when you're just a chief data officer, one of the main challenges that you have is the fourth layer, right? The prescriptive one, the one to take those insights and embed them back to the operational systems to really change the operation around based on the insights that are derived. So yes, I have a few good use cases both from television and from aviation, but I do want to address the ones that we're doing now actually in Delek. And once again, one of the main challenges, because it's a traditional company, oil and gas company, you try to find kind of the sweet spots where you can really impact and you can really create the value. So once again, one of the biggest things that you do in oil and gas is turnarounds, where you have a complete kind of shutdown of a certain plant because you need to kind of overhaul everything and make sure that it's rebuilt the right way. And we have enabled it to make it better via a data tool called Mobilio, and it allowed us really to walk through the process in each one of the pieces in a very kind of precise way, and the daily insights. So we just embedded the daily insights, and this is how the term that we used. So those daily insights allowed the people around this turnaround to actually act better upon that and reflect it back to the operational people with their digital components providing data back. So it was kind of closing the loop with the daily insights embedded back on platforms to kind of close the loop there. And thank God we are succeeding with that and providing enormous value with bringing back the plant sooner than expected. So it was really, really good value creation there, and just with embedding the right tool to the right use case.
I could talk to you both all day long, but really thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. Your insights are invaluable. And for those who are listening, thank you so much for your time. If you want to see other interviews, please go to cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. And thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evan.